See, my biggest concern right now is when they're going to get around to chapters 3 through 72. I'm kidding. Hi, how are you doing? I'm talking quietly because it's very late at night, and I, alongside Matt and our better halves earlier this evening, got out seeing It Chapter 2. Specifically, we saw a double bill. It Chapter 1, as it is now retroactively known, and It Chapter 2 at the cinema. What was cool about that was It Chapter 2 started technically around 9:45, which meant that we saw it earlier than the majority of the world, because it was too early to be a midnight screening, and it would have been like 7 hours before the midnight screenings in the US. So lucky us. It Chapter 2 follows on from It, the 2017 horror movie, which was about a group of kids in the late 80s dealing with a series of child disappearances in the town of Derry in Maine, and them all realising that they've each had different experiences with a mysterious clown called Pennywise, and that it's all connected. And they, minor spoiler alert for the original, they defeat the entity and swear to return to Derry 27 years later, because that's the pattern of its appearances in Derry's history. 27 years later, if it comes back, they have to return to deal with it. It Chapter 2 picks up 27 years later in 2016. Our characters are off in different places in their lives. Bill is a successful author. Stanley is happily married. Ben is a real estate developer. Richie Tozier is a stand-up comedian. Eddie Casbrack works in, I'm trying what he calls it now. He's got a law job. I can't remember what it is specifically, but he's got a law job. Beverly Marsh is part of a successful company, partnered with her husband. And Mike has stayed behind in Derry. He runs the library now, which we last saw in the first movie when Benny was being chased by a headless boy. Because Mike stayed behind, Mike is the first one to notice things. He's also the only one to remember what happened when they were children. Because it seems the curse of Pennywise and It is that it affects people's minds. Like we saw in the last movie, there were people who didn't help when Benny was being attacked by the bully Henry Powers. And there's the balloon in the back seat. The sort of the curse of it all is still ever present and affects you. The more you are away from Derry, the less you remember of it. But Mike stayed. So after a series of phone calls, he rallies the Losers Club back together to face down It and defeat it once and for all. This is spoiler free, so I'm not going to go into much detail, but I will say the movie does a great job at giving you a greatest hits tour of the previous one, but changing the songs, if that makes any sense. What you think might burst out of a fridge based on your knowledge of the first one may not necessarily be the same thing this time, but you'll still see a fridge, that kind of stuff. The adult cast, comprised of Isaiah Mustafa, James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain, Bill Hader, and etc., etc. They are so well cast, because a core component of the 2017 movie was that kids cast. They were excellent. The chemistry was brilliant. The delivery was wonderful, and you really felt the fear that came with children being tormented by this flesh-hungry beast that preys on your phobias. You really felt that the fear felt tangible in the first movie, because of course when kids are in trouble, no one ever believes them. They run to the grown-ups and no one believes them, even more so in the world of It. So them as adults returning, the actors do a superb job at recapturing the innocence and the tone and the vibe of each of those child performers from the first movie, that you believe 100% that it is the same people. The downside to that is the downside to It in general. Like, the second half is usually, well, or in the case of the book, the interspersed later sections, because both stories are intertwined throughout the entirety of this giant brick-sized tome. The adults never always feel in this and in the 90s TV miniseries, like they're in as much danger as the kids. This does suffer from that somewhat, but the situations they find themselves in are no less unnerving. The thing I love about 2017's It is that it is not, to me, a terrifying movie. It's not a scary film. It's an unnerving movie, it's 2 a.m, and an uncomfortable movie to watch. The fear mostly comes from me being frightened for the characters. This one definitely ramps up the creativity of the scares, because it's like, they're adults, so they need to be frightened in a different way. We learn from the first one that Pennywise, feeds off of children, because it's salty. Making them scared is salting the meat. He tastes fear, and children are the easiest to scare. So with adults, he's got to get a little bit more creative. So many elements work really well. For those who know the story, maybe see the previous adaptation, you know that one of the Losers Club is not as prominent as the others in the adult portion of the story, but this film does an excellent job at making sure they are at the heart of what is going on. So though they may not have as much screen time, they inform everything that everyone is doing. They are sort of the spine, the central column of this movie. Does this film work on its own? Probably not. The flashbacks in this movie, some are literal flashbacks to the first film, some are brand new scenes, which are an excellent excuse to see the young cast again, who all slot comfortably back into their roles like a pair of warm, comfy slippers. Although do keep an ear out for those who've got like sort of voiceover conscious minds. Keep an ear out for Jack Dylan Grazer and Finn Wolfhard's vocals being pitched up a little bit to make them sound younger. But those flashbacks don't necessarily fill the body of the story in a way where if this was your first experience with it, it would work. You definitely need to see number one, and we had the wonderful benefit tonight of watching number one, and then there was a 15-minute break, and then number two started. It was a long night at the movies. Not as long as reading this, of course, but it was a long night at the movies. And I have yet to bring up It itself. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, once again, there he is, absolutely delivers. I actually preferred his performance in this one to the first one. I think he's great in the first one, but he really shines in this. There's a particular scene at a sports game under the bleachers where someone has a conversation with Pennywise, and it's the scene most like the Georgie opening of the original that makes you go, oh, that's how a kid could fall for this. I believe it now, and it's because of Bill's performance. Andre Machete does a wonderful job directing this one as well. It looks great, it sounds wonderful, the soundtrack is gorgeous. The effects are brilliant, so many of them are practical. And if you were one of those people who didn't enjoy how the TV miniseries ended, this kind of acknowledges, it sort of prepares for your preconceptions and toys with them. So are you going to be getting a certain thing that everyone likes to complain about? Yes. Are you going to be getting it very differently? Yes. So it's the same, but it's different. And are they going to repackage it in a way that makes the finale much more compelling? Yes. This isn't really a spoiler, but if you're wondering, oh, is it left open? No. It is an adaptation of the book. And amongst the things it does do strictly the same as the book, this is the end of this story. So if you want to go and see Pennywise the Dancing Clown in cinemas one more time, go and see it, Chapter 2. For our spoiler-filled thoughts on the original TV miniseries, right there, at a certain point after Friday evening, you can hear our thoughts on that as we revisit it for Big Damn Cast episode 167. And next week, come back here for episode 168, where we'll do a massive spoiler chat for It Chapter 2, as well as all sorts of other nerdy news and geeky gossip that are in the news in the following week. You can, of course, listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Soundcloud, or your podcast provider of choice. If you've seen It Chapter 2, or you are greatly anticipating watching it, let me know down in the comments below what you love about it, what you hope is in it, what you were chuffed to see was in it. See you soon, guys. Pop, pop.